And then a few months later, I remember getting a letter from AOK saying that they were going to cover 100% of my jaw surgery. And I remember the day that I got that letter in the mail, I cried. I was like bawling, happy tears. It felt like my dreams were coming true. And I was just so excited. I was so incredibly excited. Howdy und servus, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of The Pod Abroad. My name is Paulina de los Santos, and on this podcast, I share experiences about my life abroad. I'm an American who has lived in Munich, Germany for the last 9 years, and I also have conversations with my immigrant friends here where they get to share their stories as well and their lived experiences. So if any of that interests you, then continue following along. And yeah, today, this episode is going to be all about healthcare. Healthcare is a hot topic. It's the topic, and I have personal experience both growing up in the US and being part of that system, as well as having used the system the last 9 years of living in Germany. And there are a lot of differences for sure that I want to get into, but also just really explain kind of some use cases and stories about things that I've gotten done here, or offices that I've been to, things like that. I am by no means a healthcare expert, but I am just a user of the system, and I think user experiences matter as well. That's for sure. So if any of that interests you, then for sure keep listening in. If you've ever wondered what it's like to really get medical care in Germany as an American, maybe this episode is also for you. So like I said, I've been here 9 years. I moved in 2016. I was freshly 21 years old at the time, and I initially came for a master's program. So I was on a student visa, which meant I also had reduced health insurance costs, which was amazing. I remember at the time, back in 2016, I think my health insurance it was 93 euro a month, something like that. Maybe it ended up hitting 100 2 years later, but what an incredible thing as a student. Like, you cannot beat that price. And it was something that I was so very grateful to have. I have had different, I would say, procedures in Germany. I've even had a jaw surgery, full upper jaw surgery in 2021 that absolutely changed my life. I've had x-rays, I've had MRIs here, I've gone to the dentist and the orthodontist, done a lot of things, and definitely would want to share a lot about that and just my personal experience. And I wanted to also say that in my personal opinion, I do think that the German healthcare system is better than the US one. Much, much, much better. And I'm going to tell you why. I wanted to start off with a story that I wrote a few years ago. I think a few years ago, I wanted to really dive into having a blog. And I haven't written since. I really should. I think writing is cathartic and really kind of helps me put all the mumble jumble thoughts in my brain onto paper. And that's really satisfying. So here's a story that I wrote a few years ago that really sums up my sentiments towards the US and the German healthcare system. Hey, mom fell. She's in the hospital and going into emergency surgery soon. It had only been a month since I had moved from Texas to Germany, and there it was. A foreigner's deepest fear coming alive. Silence. How could this have happened so soon? The one thing I remember feeling that moment was an overwhelming sense of helplessness. You start to feel selfish, absolutely useless. You question if you've made the right choice in moving across the world. What can you possibly do when you don't believe in prayer? Do I send all my good energy out into the world? What happens when that's inevitably not enough? We'll get through this, my brother said. More silence. Dissociation. Had 5 seconds pass or a minute? How did she get to the hospital? I asked. She drove herself, with her hips shattered. She didn't want to pay for an ambulance. Pain. Deep pain. How could this ever be acceptable from the greatest country on earth? I felt sick. My blood was boiling with rage, and I felt far, so far. The greatest country on earth had once again failed my family and deeply ripped apart any feelings of patriotism. Shattered the typical notion of, you should be grateful. Other countries have it much worse. And yet here I was, 1 month into starting a new life in a foreign country, surrounded by many people whom I could not yet communicate with, though I knew they just get it. Here I was in a land where universal healthcare was not some bipartisan issue. A land where if your mother fell and broke her hip, she'd call for an ambulance with no hesitation. Because in Germany, an ambulance isn't a luxury reserved for the privileged. Neither is healthcare. And that's something I cherish daily, even 6 years later. And now I've been here for 9 years. Oof. So that was a story that I wrote 3 years ago. All of that is true. My mom fell shortly after I had moved here, and it broke my heart that she drove herself in delirious pain, probably with adrenaline shooting through her body. It's just crazy, right? You wouldn't hear a story like that here in Germany. It's crazy, but it's understandable at the same time. I completely understand, like, who wants to pay several thousands of dollars being insured, y'all, for a quick, 10-minute drive to get to the emergency room? Make it make sense. Like, the US is crazy. There are memes online saying, like, the US is like a third world country, not politically correct, I know, I say developing nation, with a Gucci belt. And I'm like, that's true. Actually, that's not even true, y'all. Many developing nations, I'm sure, have better systems than the US. So that's unfair to many other countries, that meme. Yeah, I think the story speaks for itself. And I'm extremely, extremely grateful 9 years later to be part of the German healthcare system. Many times when I have told this to Germans, like, they're kind of in shock and kind of surprised and flattered. They're like, oh wow. And maybe it's because they don't realize how good they have it because they've always just had it that way, understandably so. But maybe it takes that perspective of me coming from the US, where there once was notions of, like, the US being, like, great and having such success in all these different fields, but, like, yet we can't get healthcare right. So there was probably once that notion of US excellence, whatever that may be. And that notion isn't there anymore. It's ever apparent for the Germans that I know in my life. Like, they can see the US system from over here, and it's not something that they desire or that they think is in any way superior to this one. You can, of course, let me know down in the comments what you think, but many of my close German friends I know would have that gratitude for the system and think that the German system is better than the US one. I've also, had the response from some Germans. Like, someone once told me, like, Paulina, you always say so many good things about the German healthcare system and, like, the care that you have received, and said, like, oh, it's so much better than the US. but we don't want to be compared to the US because that's a low bar. We want to be compared to like the Nordic countries. And I'm like, ooh, there's a good take. I also like can appreciate that as well. I guess when you compare European healthcare systems to the US, like it's not hard to clearly see which one is better. Because like they said, like the bar is low, and that's fair. I want to go into kind of a first part and speak all about the fundamentals of each system, from from my understanding. Like I said, I'm not necessarily like a healthcare expert, but I can speak on my personal experience growing up in the US and living here in Germany. So in Germany, in general, we have a universal healthcare system, with a public and private option. Universal does not mean free. It means obligatory. It means mandatory. Like you have to have health insurance if you are a like legal documented person in this country. I don't know where people have gotten the notion that like universal healthcare means like it's free in Germany and like we don't pay anything. That's absolutely not true. One does pay. But it's different. It's from the US in the sense that when you are employed in Germany, a percentage relative to your salary is taken out of your paycheck, which I can appreciate, honestly, all these years later. It's like out of sight, out of mind. You never see that money. Half of the true cost, monthly cost of your health insurance comes out of your paycheck, and then the other half is matched by your employer when you're working like in a typical like corporate setting. So you don't have the option to opt out. Like your healthcare is going to be taken out of your check whether you like it or not. And therefore, we all have coverage. And that is fabulous. Like I said, one can choose whether you are like publicly insured or privately. A big way that Germany and the US vary is that majority of people here in Germany are publicly insured. And that private insurance is like typically people with a higher income. Versus in the US, it's quite the opposite. So everyone is privately insured, and people who are struggling economically are publicly insured, like with Medicare, Medicaid. And it breaks my heart on that, like saying Medicare, Medicaid of like all the cuts that are happening right now in the US by the federal government, and the fact that so many people are losing their health insurance right now, and seniors, man, like people who can't do much about it. And oof, that breaks my heart. A whole other topic though. So yeah, in the US, like I said, we are all typically privately insured. For my case, growing up, my parents were divorced since I was, I don't know, maybe 6 years old. But my dad's company allowed him to still have us on his healthcare plan. And I think you can be, I don't know, every healthcare is different in the US, but like I think in theory I could have been on his plan until I was like 26 years old. That's also a huge difference between like Germany and the US, is that a lot of Americans choose their corporate job based on the benefits, one being healthcare. If you work at a massive, successful, big corporate, then you're going to have incredible insurance, with like a good network of doctors that you can see and decent coverage. And therein lies a problem, man. So like when you really think about it, yeah, there's a lot of pressure. Because, yeah, you could be working at that company for, I don't know, over 10 years, and like your wife and your 3 kids are also all insured under your health insurance. Like you can't just get up and leave your job if you are unhappy, because your job is tied to the livelihood of your family. So I don't like that. I think that keeps people, of course, like in yeah, sometimes unhealthy situations in their workplace, and they have to find another job before being able to leave that situation, which is unfortunate and not something that I would necessarily want. I don't like, yeah, that your job often determines your healthcare access in the US. I think that's unfortunate because here in Germany, everyone's covered. And then once you have insurance in the US, oof, like that's step one. Because in the US, we have copays. What are copays, you may ask? Growing up, for example, my mom was a single parent of with three kids. And anytime like one of us got sick, we all got sick. And in the early 2000s, with having like good healthcare with my dad's work, my mom would take us to the doctor. If we all had to see like our general practitioner, we would all go there. And our copay in the early 2000s was each $20. It was $20 per kid. So that's $60 off the bat just to be seen. And quite often, I mean, your kid has XYZ, like you just need to get maybe the certain medicines or prescriptions. So you go in there and like the doctor checks you. And then you get prescribed sometimes a cocktail of things. I will say, of course, like healthcare in the US is, I mean, speaking from experience in Texas, like it is very liberal with the meds versus Germany. And then you have your prescriptions, which are also not cheap. That can cost another maybe $50. I remember when I first came here and I got some little prescriptions and I went to my pharmacy and it was like €3, €5. I was shocked. And like deeply impressed. But one thing I will say, like that I'm not impressed about is the fact that you have to speak to a human, like at a pharmacy, to get ibuprofen or like acetaminophen. I think that kind of sucks, but I guess I understand like the Germans' reasoning for that. Um, like in the US, I just think of like how you can go to Costco or Walmart or literally anywhere, a grocery store, and get like, I don't know, 1,000 pills in like a jumbo XXL size bottle for like a very decent price. Comes down to a difference in culture, that's for sure. Um, Speaking of which, when I first moved to Germany, like I quickly realized that like these people are not pill takers in general, like not nearly at the rate of what it is in the US. I'm trying to think. The first time I got here, I was super, super sick. Like, I think the same month in 2016, like, felt like I was on my deathbed, probably had like strep or something. And then I went to a doctor. That was my first ever experience going to a GP, a Hausarzt here in Munich. And it wasn't Freising back then. And I remember like being so sick and telling him like everything hurts, like my throat is burning, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me and he was like, okay, like this is what you need to do. You need to go home, sleep it off, and like drink some tea, some herbal tea. And I was like, huh? And my little ignorant American mind was like, I need antibiotics. Like that's what I need. And I was kind of mad. I think I left being mad that I had zero prescriptions. Maybe my American conditioned mind had associated getting like, yeah, getting your list of prescriptions with like that being the only way that you get better. Which of course isn't always the truth. And yes, I guess the German way is powerful of like letting your body like kind of fight through it. Um, but sometimes you need modern medicine. I'm gonna go into that like all about like my jaw surgery in a bit. But yeah, that was like my first ever experience, and I remember asking at the front desk like, okay, like how much did this cost? Like, what do I need to pay? And they're like, you gave us your card, like you're good to go. And I was like, that's weird. Like, surely I'll get it like a little bill later. Y'all, like how sad. Like I was scared. I kind of feared going because I was conditioned to the fact that like you have to pay a copay in the US. And then don't get me started on going to a specialist in the US. Like specialists can be like $70 with health insurance. I'm talking about being insured. can still come at a high cost. So, like, when I think about quality of life in the US, and I think of like how in major cities in Texas, I would say at the same big corporates as we have here in Munich, like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, kind of those companies, I'm sure the wages in big Texas cities are significantly higher than here in Munich, but everything is relative because Americans need that money. Because like what happens if you need a surgery? What happens like um yeah, in case of emergencies? Um Americans need to have that safety net and have that like kind of like backup savings for a medical emergency, whereas like that's not something I ever lose sleep on here in Germany. Um, which is good. It's a great feeling like getting to sleep at night knowing that I am not going to be inundated and like yeah, in forever in debt from medical bills here. I don't get unexpected bills in the mail. They are very, very transparent here. And that's something I am grateful. So I think it like took moving here to kind of have that perspective and realize like how stressful the US system was. And growing up, like my mom always like joked and said like you're the only healthy child because my both of my brothers had some medical issues, and my mom has had rheumatoid arthritis since she was 13 years old and had multiple surgeries in her life. So she's gone through it, man. Like with the US medical system, and um it just costs so much money even being insured, and that is truly unfortunate and something that that I, with a German kind of mentality, cannot understand, man, how the US hasn't gotten it together. And it makes me sad how, like, Bernie Sanders literally, like, is too radical for, I guess, majority of Americans. Because y'all, like, why is he so radical of just like wanting universal health care in the US? Um, yeah. I think Americans a lot of the time can also be, I mean, a lot of people are community oriented, but a lot of people are kind of just like, oh, like um everyone for themselves. Like I don't want to be paying an assistant to help someone else, which is crazy and definitely not my vibe. Um and you could be needing the system one day if you were ever in a medical emergency. Like tomorrow isn't guaranteed, y'all. We could be getting like yeah, into something serious that was unintended, unexpected. Um, I just think that like we can never just take our current health for granted. Truly. Actually, on everybody's birthday cards that I've ever written, I always tell them like I wish you nothing short of good health and happiness, because I genuinely mean that. Like health is wealth. Health means a lot to me. Um and yeah. I want to go into now a bit about, yeah, money talks, costs for different things, and peace of mind. So, like I said, in Germany, I pay one monthly fee and then I'm done. I do not get surprise bills here. I don't have like $1,000 MRI. I'm actually getting an MRI tomorrow in Munich. Actually, it's in Planegg, which is outside of Munich. The German system is not perfect. I will say, of course, waiting times sometimes are crazy. I was trying to get an MRI here, and sometimes you can't find an appointment for another 2 months here in Munich. And I'm just like, I need this now, though. Um, Luckily, I have a connection outside of Munich. If you look sometimes on the countryside, then one finds more luck getting appointments for special certain things. Um, like I said, German system is not perfect either, but it's one that I do prefer. We do not have copays here. No separate bills for x-rays. Standard lab work is also covered. Any time that I have had to pay for stuff, it's been incredibly reasonable. Like if I go to, I don't know, the dentist and get like A special teeth cleaning, I might pay like 60 or $70 euro for that. Um yeah, the first time I ever went to a dentist as a student back in Freising, 21 years old, I had tooth pain and I walk in there and they told me, "Yeah, let's get you in the X-ray room." And I was like, "Wait, wait, wait. I can't afford this." Like, and they're like, "You don't this is not this is not an extra cost. You need an X-ray." Mind blown. Then I remember like another year later, I had a mark on my lip just appear like a mole. I Google it. Google tells me like this could be cancerous on your skin if it wasn't there before. I of course panic. I've never been to a dermatologist in my life. That's like rich people shit for me. In Texas growing up like um yeah, not a place that I had been to. So I go to my little dermatologist here in Germany, and they were like, "Okay, we need to take this out. We're gonna cut it out. Come back next week for the little procedure." And I was like, "How much is this gonna cost? I'm a student." They're like, "It's covered because you need it." Um, just a relief, such a relief, y'all, to be able to get these things done without paying an arm and a leg. Um, Yeah, just having that financial peace of mind um, impacts one's lifestyle and mental health. Um, I remember like growing up and just like kind of acting reckless as a kid. My mom was always like, "Be careful, like I can't afford like a hospital visit," which like fair. She could not. We could not. Um and like the Germans don't think like that, especially like on the crazy jungle gyms that they have here in Munich. They look insane and they're so tall. And me and my like limited American kind of mindset, I'm working on it. I see those jungle gyms that the kids are playing on. I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're gonna break an arm. Like that's so dangerous. Like that could be expensive, but it's not expensive here. And therefore kids grow up like a bit more free in that sense when you don't have to worry about medical bills. There's so many just different ways that you go about life when you don't have to be like wildly cautious about the idea of ending up in the ER or needing to go see a doctor or specialist. I have travel health insurance for when I go back to the US. And that's extremely necessary and important to me because I simply cannot fathom going back to the US, some freak accident happening, and me being in medical debt there. Huh? Like, it's just like not something I would ever desire. And I don't have any more health insurance there permanently because I don't live there anymore. Um, yeah. So, moving into some personal stories about German healthcare in action. Speaking about my lived experiences here, I want to get into my jaw surgery story in 2021. So, actually, it starts, I guess, in 2020, the beginning of the year that I thought was going to be like the best year ever. It was in some ways and was not in many other ways for obvious reasons. Beginning of 2020, I had just started a full-time corporate job, my first ever full-time job in my life, and was like, I'm going to take care of myself. Like, it's time to get adult braces. And I went to an orthodontist here in Munich, and I knew I had an underbite, um, and meaning my upper jaw was severely like recessed, kind of like that. Like my lower jaw was protruding forward, and I had always been deeply insecure about that in my life, and it also affected how I ate. Though if you don't know what a good jaw is like, you don't know like how bad things really are. My back molars did not touch. So chewing things took longer than normal for me. And I remember when I was younger going to a doctor with my mom and them saying like this would not like your jaw would not be covered. It would be considered a cosmetic surgery. You're looking at anywhere from 30, 40,000 on up. And I remember going home and crying that day. I was probably in my teens and thinking like, wow, I guess I'll get jaw surgery one day in my life when I'm wealthy and have that kind of money. And I put that on the back burner. So I get my full-time job in Germany all those years later. And yeah, I'm freshly graduated from a master's program here in Munich in sustainability. And I get the info from my orthodontist saying, yeah, your jaw is bad. It is a class, whatever, class 3. I don't remember what the number was. Um, but basically, it was so bad that they said that in the cases that they have worked with before, that typically the insurance covers this kind of case, because in Germany they believe that you having an underbite it'll only progress and get worse in your older age and affect sleeping and breathing. Therefore, they were to cover it. They said, so let's send in a request to your health insurance. And then a few months later, I remember getting a letter from AOK saying that they were going to cover 100% of my jaw surgery. And I remember the day that I got that letter in the mail, I cried. I was like bawling, happy tears. It felt like my dreams were coming true. And I was just so excited. I was so incredibly excited. So I think like, I don't know, days after I got that letter, my orthodontist was like, okay, let's get going. They put some braces on me, to prep for the surgery that was then about a year later, 2021, I had jaw surgery, upper jaw surgery. I think my upper jaw was advanced 8 millimeters forward. I still have the titanium plates here in my home. Maybe I should make some little earrings out of them. So they sawed through my upper skull, advanced my upper jaw, the maxilla, 8 millimeters forward, and then fastened it with 2 titanium plates and 18 screws into my face. It was a surgery that was a little over 5 hours long. And it was fully covered. But you know what the crazy part is that like even at a practice, because I got it like at a nice practice and not a general hospital. The true cost of this surgery, I think was like, I think $7,000, $8,000, like not crazy US prices. So even without healthcare insurance, like the price is significantly lower than like the inflated prices of the US. But the best benefit of getting my jaw surgery here in Munich was having the time in my life to recover. So I want to talk all about now the medical leave at one's work. So when you're working in corporate, in theory, one has unlimited sick days. And I think like when I've told Americans that, like their first thought is like, oh, but people must abuse it. Like that's their first thought, like, oh, but that would never work because people would abuse it. Like, do people abuse it? I'm sure. Do most people abuse it? No, because that's embarrassing. And you have to show your face to your coworkers. There are honest people here, y'all. And the system is there for a reason, because if you go to work really sick in Germany, people are like kind of grossed out, especially after the pandemic. They're like grossed out and kind of pissed off at you. It's like, what are you doing here in the office getting us all sick? So typical is to like to incorporate is to have anywhere from like 22 to 30 days of vacation a year. I've always had 30 vacation days a year, and I'm not talking about PTO. Y'all, how in the US we have paid time off, which is a combination of vacation and sick days. That is madness. That's insane. It's not right. Yeah, like one should be able to take off sick if they're sick and have their rightfully earned vacation days. It just makes sense. And my first day of working full time, I had just as many vacation days as my senior boss who had been there like with the company over 20 years, because time off and sick days are a right. here. It's not something that's incentivized and earned here in Germany. And that's just such a simple concept that makes perfect sense to me. So I took 6 weeks off from my full-time job then after I had my jaw surgery, which was an incredible blessing. I'm not religious, but a blessing from the universe that I felt so privileged to be able to take that time off and to have my job, have that security of knowing I could return back. And my coworkers supported me and my boss understood. I had already been working there now, like, I think a year and a half. And they were all like, we'll see you when you're back. Like, we're wishing you all the best. Like, hopefully it goes well. And I really needed that time, y'all. I had to learn how to chew again because my nerves had been like severed and things were reconnecting, and it was a whole journey. Like the first 2 weeks I had to have liquids. The body does remember. I really, really like wanted solids after, like I was so hungry towards the end. It was a whole challenge. Speaking also, like my tongue placement, and my career was a communications manager. So taking time off was extremely important to get my speech back up after having that massive life surgery. All in all, I didn't have to pay out of pocket in the end and for my jaw surgery, and that is something I'm grateful for. Well, I had to like pay half and then I was reimbursed, in the end my insurance covered it. And it's just something like that I am forever grateful for. And I don't know how many times I've said I'm grateful for the German system in this episode, but I truly am. Yeah. What else can I say? Like day to day here, it's not, like I said, it's not a perfect system, but I feel like it works when you need it to, and it's like there for you in my personal experience. And like you are also able to kind of jump around and find another doctor if yours doesn't have appointments. So sometimes, like I said, the waiting times can be long, but like if you're a little flexible, then the system can work for you as well. It's not perfect. There are flaws. I have also had issues with several doctors here that I go to and I'm just like extremely uncomfortable with. I've had, like traumatic experiences, like with doctors being like insanely rude, just like shockingly rude. But do I blame the entire system on that? No. It could just be like they're like that. And I will say, like, I mean, in the US, like you could also get a bad doctor as well. My mom in Austin once had like a general practitioner that was trying to sell her Herbalife, which is insane. She called her the witch doctor. And I was like, please don't go back to that doctor. Like, what the, huh? And for Germans who don't know what Herbalife is, it's like some supplement with like multi-level marketing scheme. That's crazy. So all that being said is that both countries can have really, really good doctors and bad doctors as well. Like, but I think as a patient, it's up to you to try to like establish a connection with the doctors that you do feel safe with and that you do trust and have a good experience with. And I think a lot of that, like for me in Munich, comes by word of mouth. Asking my friends like, hey, do you have any doctor for this? And some of them were like, oh, hell yeah. For a Frauenarzt, like an OBGYN or even a Hausarzt. And when people complain and are like, oh, like I hate like my Hausarzt, my GP, I'm like, have you tried other ones? Like, do you go to the same one every time? There are also things we can be doing as patients to be like developing a better doctor-patient relationship. But I understand people's complaints as well. They are valid, and I do hear that. So if you've also had several painful issues with the German healthcare system, let me know if you're comfortable with that down below, and let's talk about it. What are things that you think could be improved in the German healthcare system? Like I said, wait times for sure. And what else? I mean, how can I say like I wish doctors were like friendlier or more nice when that could be like deeply cultural. That's not fair to say. So, I think if it was like one thing I'd want to change from the German system right now, it would be wait times. Um, but other than that, like I don't know, like I don't need to like be best friends with my Hausarzt general practitioner. If they are, I don't know, decent with me and they get the job done, like that's enough for me. Yeah, I don't know. Everyone has different needs from what what they're looking for within their physicians. Yeah. So all in all, I wanted to say that moving to Germany didn't just change my education or career or the culture within me, but it really changed how I think about being cared for deeply. None of this crossed my mind before moving, before leaving the US. I never thought that the US system was so flawed until I saw and experienced a better one. My first working student job when I was 21 in Munich was I had an experience with one of my coworkers, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be leaving for 6 months," and I was like, "What? Why?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going on parental leave," and I was like, "But you're the dad, like, huh?" Like, wow, that's crazy. Like, I really thought, like, what? And it's sad that like the thought of a father actually being present to raise their child had never genuinely crossed my mind. And that goes like with a very like patriarchal system and way of thinking in the US. So, like the dad goes and works and the mom stays at home. Um, yeah, just crazy that I had never even fathomed paternal leave, a father taking off from work. Like what a concept. What a concept. And it does make me sad in general, like in the US, um how healthcare is under attack right now, first off, how premium prices like are going up and reaching astronomical levels that people will not be able to afford. People will then choose to be uninsured. Many people who need healthcare, and that breaks my heart for sure. Like for me, the German system isn't just better, it's fairer. Why can't the US be more fair? Like, make it make sense, y'all. From the greatest country on earth, um, which I clearly do not believe. But don't get me twisted and think that I think that Germany is the greatest country on earth. Like, do we need to have a title for that in general? But just to say that there's a lot of issues that need to be improved in the US, and there's so much wealth. There's so much wealth in the US. Like, why haven't we figured this out? Why is it political? Why do people perceive Bernie Sanders as a radical socialist for wanting healthcare for all? Huh? These are all the questions that I have in my mind. And I also start to think about friends and family that I know in the US who are uninsured right now. Some are uninsured literally because they cannot afford healthcare, like that their job doesn't offer it, and they simply would not be able to meet their living needs, like with cost of living and premiums being so expensive. So not every job even offers healthcare packages. And then I have other people that I know in the US who actively choose, like could afford healthcare insurance, but it's not mandatory. So they actively choose not to have any. And that's crazy to me, y'all, huh? Like just because we're healthy today doesn't mean that we would be tomorrow. And yeah, you just never know. So that's also unfortunate. What's crazy to me also is in the US, in Texas, having insurance as a driver, like on your car, is mandatory, but health insurance isn't. Yeah, don't get that either. Um, but in general, if you have experienced both the US and German healthcare systems, I'd love to hear your story. Please drop a comment below. Send me an email. I'll leave my email in this video's description. And I'd love to know, what do you think about both systems? Or if you feel a particular certain way, whether it be good or bad, towards either system that you want to share, let's talk about it. I love hearing people's stories, and I do not think that the German system's like the end all be all and like that it's reached its peak and it's perfect. I know people have several issues with this system as well. So I think knowledge is power and hearing people's stories matter. So, yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. If you've made it to the end, thanks a lot for sticking around and listening. Healthcare is a special topic and something hot right now, and kind of hot in general in my life. Like, healthcare will always be hot and in style, whether it's trendy or not. Healthcare is something deeply important to me. So yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. And until next week, thanks a lot. The Pod Abroad's video, audio, and music is produced and edited by Tim Teherne. Make sure to give us a follow and leave a comment if you like this episode.